believers, non-believers, unaffiliated believers, sort of believers, and even you think I'm a believers. Welcome to the Uncensored Unprofessor. This is a podcast where we welcome converts, but where we think like disciples. This is a show where we talk about things that the church is both terrified and silent to address. For him who has ears to hear. What's the difference between a convert and a disciple? Well, for years I'd tell my theology majors, converts get to go to heaven, disciples get to change the world. And I'd say that because Jesus just wasn't touring Judea counting converts. No, he told us what his mission was when he gave us ours. Go and make disciples of the nations. But for today's reflection, what's the difference between a convert and a disciple? Discernment. Converts are just getting started. They are, God bless them, newborns. But disciples, they've moved down the path. And what does that entail? Well, among several qualities, discernment. The word discern traces its roots, its etymology, to diakrino. Diakrino. Say diakrino, class. Diakrino, teacher. Diakrino means to separate, to tease out, to notice differences, to judge in light of those differences. Discernment. Recognizing beauty as against ugliness, lies compared to truth, good versus evil. What prompted this reflection today? My morning lectionary reading. Oh, and full confession, I didn't mean to interrupt my series on suffering. I have one more episode, I think. I have another episode to do on that, but this reflection kind of took of a life its own, and so I'm going to go with it. In my morning Bible reading, first there was Ecclesiastes 3, 1 through 5. For everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to keep silence, a time to speak, a time to love, a time to hate, a time for war, and a time for peace. For every season turn. And how do you know which season is at hand among all of those? Discernment, wisdom. And then I turn to read 1 Corinthians 2, 11 through 16, where Paul concludes like this. Those who are unspiritual do not receive the things of God's Spirit, for they're foolishness to them. And they are unable to understand them because they are spiritually discerned. And then he quotes Isaiah 40. For who has known the mind of the Lord so as to instruct him? But we have the mind of Christ. Now, I think that's a bold assertion on Paul's part. We who know Christ have the Spirit of God? Yeah. And that Spirit gives us understanding, discernment, or in my theological framing, Stimmung, attunement, wiring, being wired to the frequency. We who know Christ are wired by His Spirit. We're attuned to His mind. We actually can discern good from evil, truth from lies. We don't have to see visions or have prophetic dreams because we know Christ and His words. We have a template for recognizing patterns. Life is comprised of patterns. I mean, people are comprised of and shaped by and do patterns. You know this, but the fancy German word is Gestalt. Gestalt, shape, mold, cutout, mutually informing shapes that fit together, the assemblage, the whole. And if you really know the Gestalt, the pattern, frequently all you have to see or hear is one element of that pattern, and you can immediately recognize the whole, the entirety. My friend Dave and I were talking the other day on the phone. And we were talking about how in Christ we have a sensibility to recognize patterns. Dave talked about how Jesus called it having ears to hear or eyes to see. Because with wisdom we can hear and recognize lying patterns. We quickly see and recognize ugly patterns. Here's a personal analogy. For 4 years, all 4 years of my high school, I worked for a gas station car wash. Red carpet car wash. Welcome to Red Carpet. Can I check your oil? My boss would pay us a 10-cent bonus for every can of oil we'd sell. Now, that was back in the 70s. 10 cents mattered. And every 4 or 8 hour long shift that I was working, I'd be fueling people's cars and washing windshields, and then over at the car wash part, I'd be washing off cars. And through all that, I was looking closely at their design, the materials they were made out of, their established colors, their aesthetic. And I was doing that 12 to 40 hours per week for 4 years. And at some point through those years, I could see any car out on the street and tell you precisely who the automobile manufacturer was. Oh, look, the arc of that front right quarter panel? It's an Audi. Oh, the molding of that taillight? He's got a Chevy. Or look at the sweep of that bumper. Yep, it's a Toyota. Now, I can't do it today, not like I could during those years, but I had learned to recognize the patterns. All cars have a gestalt, lines, forms. All manufacturers have curves and patterns and colors that they replicate throughout their vehicles' many different designs. They are committed to their patterns. And life is like that. We're surrounded by patterns. Frankly, there's a pattern to a mind and a heart that has been given to Christ. And when you run into someone who confesses Christ, but the pattern of their life is tilted, you can almost intuit that immediately. You can tell something's off. Their core orientation is askew, or their wires don't run back through Christ. Even if they say Christian phrases, their gestalt is skewed. Hey, you disciples listening today, attuned to Christ, we can read the tea leaves. The patterns are crystallizing. We can see rampant evil on the horizon. And we shouldn't at all be surprised. This rampant evil comes as an angel of light.
We can keep you safe. Trust us. We'll make your lives happier. Just follow our easy instructions. We know how to help you live healthier lives. And as an added bonus, you won't even have to do any planning. We'll do the heavy lifting.
Oh, they endlessly tell us it's all for our good. They stand there and smile and look us straight in the eye and tell us how generous they're being, but they are straight up lying. I just watched the Netflix show Black Mirrors, and the episode starring red-headed Bryce Dallas Howard, the episode was titled Nosedive. Now, I'm not going to tell you the whole story, but in one scene, she's in the airport ticket counter, and she's grown profoundly frustrated at being screwed over by the airline. And then, in the middle of this frustration, a big airport security policeman comes up to her with a goofy, way too big a smile for the situation, and tells her, "Ma'am, everything's all right. It's under control now." And he tells her it's time for her to leave. And he conveys all that in a grotesque, over-the-top, "you're not in control, I am" kind of way. That's what faux angels of light, who are really the faces of darkness, are always like. But when they're done speaking, the uptake is always misery, ruination, prison, death. And again, we know because the pattern's already been tried in history. And yeah, you should go watch that episode of Black Mirror's Nosedive. It's cool. It's a clever way to set up where I think we're headed. But this pattern's already been tried in history. Germany, Russia, China, Cuba, Venezuela. Oh, my aching back, now Australia? How can we be certain about our assessment? Because we know the gestalt. We know, we've seen across history that all those powers are liars at heart. And how can we discern that? Well, actually, in oodles of ways. I mean, any more if they open their mouths, they're lying.
Just give us all your money. We know how to take care of you. We'll be compassionate with your money. They hate you, but us, for you, we only have love deep down in our hearts.
Oh, geesh, my blood curdles when I hear those kinds of lies. Or here's a criteria for you. Proverbs 8:36 says, "Those who hate me love death." People who love death hate God. People who believe abortion on demand is a holy sacrament hate God. People who believe excising in utero babies is something to cheer about, Proverbs says they love death and hate God. Or people who force injections upon the unwilling, knowing full well that those injections can have devastating effects, they love death and hate God. Diacrino, teasing out shapes, recognizing patterns, seeing emerging patterns, listening to the frequencies, judgment, discernment. Now, 2 years into this slotch, I'm more encouraged than even 5 months ago. Good people are finally standing up, but not at all enough yet. I mean, yeah, it's a start. And without courageous people standing up, where is this headed? Well, building off last week's cultural reflections, just what do I think is going on? Where is this COVIDia headed? Where is the bone-crushing sound of big tech ushering us? Because again, now into our 3rd year of the madness, wherein masks don't, wherein vaccines aren't, and wherein boosters don't. Where do I believe this is headed? Back to the origins. Remember, this came from China. And quickly over the last 2 years, insidious, powerful people have come to think, by God, this stuff came from China. Let's take it all back to China. Full circle, baby. Circle back, baby. Is all of that too opaque for you? Okay, I'll be more direct. Oh, and to my astonishment, my thoughts today are substantiated by a December 2021 article I read in Imprimis, Hillsdale College's political magazine, where there was an article by Michael Rechtenwald. He has a PhD in literary and cultural studies, and I was halfway into writing today's episode when in my email box, a Hillsdale...
You mean Reed College?
No.
You mean Harvard?
No, Hillsdale. Hillsdale, a beacon of light in an otherwise gobshited college system. That Hillsdale would risk their reputation with an author narrating the history of the Great Reset is a huge reveal for me. This is no longer QAnon crazy talk. This is mainstream knowledge now. Hillsdale's reporting out on this stuff. So wait, where was I going with all this? Oh yeah, I believe this is headed toward a social credit system.
Control, power, money, money, power, control.
Geesh, again, it's not about money. Pharmaceutical companies are making billions.
Booster, get your 5th booster today. Get 'em hot before they're not.
And man, I promise you this, bureaucrats and politicians and med school presidents and major media moguls will one day, if they're not already via offshore bank accounts, they will one day receive massive gift checks, enormous payouts. Maybe it'll be something long after they've retired, long after no one is using their names in public discourse. But moolah? Oh yeah, there will be payola. How do politicians, even if they do make 180,000 a year, 200,000 a year, how do they amass portfolios in the tens of millions of dollars across their careers? Payola.
Can you please spell that for us?
Sure. CASH. But this is about way more than money. This is about power, the monopolization of power into the hands of a few. The lure of power is, for certain personality profiles, about as exhilarating as it gets. For certain personality types, the prospect of power causes their pulse to zoom. Eager sweat drips off their nipples. And now that they've seen that, 65% of the population are sheeple, they really believe they can and are trying to pull it off. Depending on how things can be rolled out, ultimate power is just a few years away, or, gersh, sooner, if the courageous would just shut the bleep up. In October 2019, 2 months before the Wu flu broke out, the World Economic Forum, the WEF, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation held an exercise. They called it Event 201. Rechtenwald writes, where those groups simulated an international response to the outbreak of a novel coronavirus. This forum, Professor Rechtenwald reports, anticipated almost every eventuality of the actual COVID crisis. Most notably the responses by governments, health agencies, the media, and tech companies. He goes on. The responses and their effects included worldwide lockdowns, the collapse of businesses and industries, the adoption of biometric surveillance technologies, an emphasis on social media censorship to combat misinformation, the flooding of social and legacy media with authoritative sources, widespread riots, and mass unemployment. Yikes, that's a little scary, eh? They predicted what they quickly then fostered. Wow!
What's your special today?
Of course, we have a freshly baked coronavirus, specially flown in from Eastern China, comes with a brand new painter's mask and a free 666 tat on the back of your neck.
Sweet. First round for the house is on me.
Rechtenwald notes that a 2020 book published by Klaus Schwab and Thierry Malloret, €2, entitled COVID and the Great Reset, the two declared that the flurona represents an opportunity that can be seized, and that we should take advantage of this unprecedented opportunity to reimagine our world. I'm still quoting, there's that word reimagine that's showing up in progressive speak all the time, right? Where are they going with that? We know now. We should take advantage of this unprecedented opportunity to reimagine our world, and that for those fortunate enough to find themselves in industries naturally resilient to the pandemic, Rechtenwald inserts, think here of big tech companies like Apple, Google, Facebook, Amazon. The crisis was not only more fiscally bearable, but even a source of profitable opportunities at a time of distress for the majority. End quote. Again, is that not exactly what we've seen over the last 2 years? Tech giants gazing for misinformation, small businesses getting crushed, unemployment soaring, national lockdowns, and big tech companies becoming fabulously rich. This is following a playbook. Let's recognize the pattern. And then, how to enforce the new unprecedented agenda, because it's not, it's been tried before, with the employment of a social credit score that will slowly, like an anaconda, squeeze to death, well, figuratively at first, but literally in the end, non-woke corporations and businesses clear out of the market. This is Rechtenwald writing still. These thinkers and influencers are open about their aims. They mean to end the older neoliberal form of capitalism and usher into its place a new stakeholder capitalism, end quote.
Oh dear, what to blazes is stakeholder capitalism?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. Rechtenwald answers like this: stakeholder capitalism entails corporate cooperation with the state and vastly increased governmental intervention in the economy, end quote. Or put more simply, the government will favor some businesses, those who comply and share money, over others, those who don't and won't. Or, still more starkly, On this proposed envisioned reimagined system, those on the top will get freakishly wealthy and the rest of we muggles will endure a socialistic shat. Now, each step of the crisis, Dr. Rechtenwald notes, will be used as another leveraged power grab for statists and their allies. Each acute crisis contributes to the power of the state, end quote. And man, there's another phrase I've been repeating for months. More crisis equals more statist power grab. What other crises does the WEF and the Gates Foundation promulgate? Well, no surprise, per Dr. Rechtenwald, those crises include the end of national borders, unrestrained federal printing of money followed by inflation, increased taxation, fostering increased societal dependence upon the state, broken supply chains, restrictions and job losses due to vaccine mandates, and the prospect of personal carbon allowance, end quote. And man, oh man, shut my door. That's the clear agenda I've been bemoaning for over a year now.
I did taw a putty cat.
What we're watching is part of a planned gestalt, you guys. Now, it blows my mind because I had already begun to postulate what Rechtenwald now publicly puts into print, which is the template for this came from Xinhua, and it's headed back round toward Xinhua. Regional social credit card trials were first implemented in China in the 1980s in the Shandong Northern Province. And up there, the Chinese government sought to develop a personal banking and a financial credit rating system, especially for rural individuals and small businesses that lacked documented records. And the national system, to, of course, lovingly and generously care for everyone in the name of love, that began in earnest in 2009. In China, and the full national program began in 2011 under Chinese Premier Wen Jiabao. And the People's Bank of China to track credit and fiscal issues, and the Supreme People's Court to do legal tracking work together, right? And excuse me for interrupting, we should not miss the irony of those names, right? The air quotes People's Bank, the air quotes People's Court. As if this was some kind of all-inclusive, democratic, best for everyone, we're all in it together, community of beneficence were at work, right? Lord, I hate the double speak-ease with all my heart.
January 6 was an insurrection, the likes of which we haven't seen since Pearl Harbor.
Straight up doublespeak, propaganda. But in China, between the bank and the court and big tech, every person in China has their identity, lifestyle decisions, health records, values, words through phones and computers, and faces through AI facial recognition, tracked, stacked, and assessed. In China, your social credit has a score ranging from 350 to 950, and Rechtenwald says they're based on habit and behavior. The higher the score, the better. And guess what they want to assess? Duh. Are you trustworthy? Oh, you pay your taxes in full and on time? Wow, you're trustworthy. Cool. You get a shop at the clean, well-stocked, and sanitary grocery store. Are you trustworthy? Oh, you failed to get your annual physical checkup and your fourth booster? You failed to show up at the government's clinic? No? Oh, that's just a shame. You'll have to shop at the filthy used goods store. Are you trustworthy? Yar? Yeah? You're living according to the traditional, everyone knows that, moral codes? Outstanding. Yes, you may indeed purchase a monthly subway pass. Are you trustworthy? No. You said a bad word about President Slotchy? That's so sad. You'll have to walk the 4.5 miles to work. So sorry. Trustworthiness, your moral character, the quality of your decisions, all assessed by a faceless governmental tracking system against which there is no appeal. And by the way, I don't myself chant, "Let's go, Brandon," but I am delighted I can still live in a country where that kind of satire is allowed in public. But again, the Chinese overlay, trustworthiness, safety. I mean, how did they ensure that we'll all be safe? Promoting safety, making sure that everyone is indeed trustworthy, safe.
Howdy. Yuck. I'm here from the government, and I only want to help. How can I help keep you safe?
NBC News.
You mean Fox?
NBC News did a short documentary on China's social credit system in June of 2019. If you want to see it, you can email me at uncensoredunprofessor@gmail.com, and I'll send you the web link for that little 9-minute documentary and another one I watched that helped me to generate this episode, specifically about China. In 2019, China had something like 200 million surveillance cameras in their nation. That meant China had something like half of all the surveillance cameras in the world. And those cameras, equipped with AI software, they can recognize and track your face. Your face, Jerry. Big tech overlaid with government. Again, something I've been talking about repeatedly on the podcast. Do we have any doubt that that kind of facial recognition technology was used in D.C. to recognize and arrest some of the January 6th guerrilla warfare, shoot-'em-up insurrectionists? They have AI algorithms that are built to track behaviors and decisions and interactions and how polite you are or aren't in China. And those algorithms establish your social ranking, your social credit score. That score obviously helps or diminishes your agency, your ability to purchase, go, enjoy activities and products and services. And the NBC reporter, a petite woman named Janice Freyer, said it was, quote, weird how many Chinese citizens are okay with it, are fine with it, end quote. Oh, sheeple. Human nature is what? 50% sheep? If the government says it'll keep the baby formula company from making a product that hurts your baby, if only you'll not have more than one baby, then people will sign up lickety-split. In China, there's even an app you can get on your phone that can show you how many people around you are living in financial debt. No, that's not a convicted pedophiles living in your apartment complex app. That's a people in debt phone app near you. Goodness sakes. Anyway, you start out this Chinese game with 1,000 points. There are social rankings, AAA, AA, A+, A-, B. B is less than 1,000 and it locks you into, that's not right. B's a bad score. It locks you into that probation for 2 years. C means you're on a list with the government officials. D, maybe you've committed an intentional crime or you spoke out against the government. In China, that makes you pretty much unclean, untouchable, and you're locked into that D bad status for 5 years. They can cancel your government subsidies, you can't get a loan, you're deemed untrustworthy, and you go on a public blacklist. Gosh. Oh my gosh. That's a long way from government for the people and by the people, right? It's just straight up totalitarian. And again, in China, your social credit score gives you status and benefits, things like school access, healthcare access, and it's all based on your behaviors. On the negative side of the ledger, you can lose social credit points for things like spitting in public, jaywalking, littering cigarette butts, or spreading rumors. Spreading rumors? Only this far in, and I'm describing Orwell's 1984 on crack. Other negatives? Overdraw on your credit card. Say something negative about the government on social media. Tax evasion. As it is becoming increasingly and loudly here in the United States, that's a big no-no. Speed in your car or get more than one parking ticket? Bad. Hold a, air quotes, secret meeting? Whatever the bleep on earth is secret, right? Whatever the government doesn't like at a given moment. Or on the positive side of the ledger, you can gain points for things like returning found money. Well, where would you return it? To the government? And when I saw that, I thought, man, like that wouldn't promote stealing. You can gain points when your team wins a championship, or your child joins the Chinese army, or when you rat out people participating in illegal religions or cults or crimes. Again, religions, cults, or crimes, whatever the government says it is at a given moment. You can gain points by helping a Chinese Communist Party official gain info on who attends a local Chinese Communist Party gathering. You can gain points by helping the police resolve a local dispute between neighbors. You can gain points for donating an organ. That's worth 100 points.
I'm happy to report that I'm increasing my social credit over 600 points by donating my lungs. No, of course I won't be around to enjoy my new ranking, but at least I can die in peace that my social reputation was restored in the eyes of the government. Life is good.
There are even paid governmental employees, local neighbors who, working to fill a minimum monthly quota, walk around looking for violations to note and write down and report. What do they track? People who swear, who throw cigarette butts on the ground, people who are rude. Can you imagine? In a woke moral framework, whatever the world rude would mean? Oh my gosh. People who wear red Make America Great Again hats would have their social ranking credit score going down.
Dadgum, are you pulling my leg?
Well, man, I don't know anymore. Let's say you get accused at your own Chinese local street produce business of selling bad veggies. Your social score can get dinged. They call it getting discredited. If you get on the government's bad side, you can lose access to airplanes, trains, hotel rentals, or where your kids can go to school. And man, I'm watching this documentary thinking I'm not one bit surprised. When the NBC reporter asked a Chinese governmental AI computer worker how far off the abuse of this kind of technology and tracking was, he said, 10 to 15 years. Yeah, right. Like it isn't already today intrusive, abusive, and evil. Same as it ever was. Decades ago, the Who sang, "Old boss, meet the new boss." The statist promise of safety and freedom always leads to greater oppression than was originally at work. Always. Trust the government to end all your problems? Don't be surprised when they altogether become your new totalizing problem. And now, with that gestalt, that pattern in place and discerned, we can see what the slotchy Joe White House has been proposing. Trying with all their hearts to get Senators Sinema and Manchin to sign off on hiring 10,000s more IRS agents. That's the fiscal angle. And steadily reinforcing a godless, woke, moral code. They've already spent $24 billion in 2 years on promoting critical race theory. And we can see it now. There's violation going on now that not only involves public shaming, but it involves the loss of customers and jobs. And with those, the loss of being able to pay mortgages and save for retirements. And there is obviously, everywhere we look, policies in place ever increasing to foment dependency upon the government. I mean, you could get potential FBI or Homeland Security harassment for violating some progressive code.
You have no right to want to know what we're teaching your children.
It's all being put in place. This is the same gestalt, the same pattern. This is a one-for-one with what China has been actively doing nationally now for 11 years. Now, you guys, honestly, I can't even believe I'm saying all this. Oh, may I be wrong, right? What am I, a crackpot? This all sounds so cray-cray. But if it claws like a cat and prowls like a cat and hisses like a cat, it's a friggin' cat. Otherwise, good-hearted people by the tens of millions have thrown in with the lying power brokers. And stab me in my eye? Otherwise, good-hearted Christians have thrown in with the godless bureaucrats. Saying all this, realizing all this, watching all this, my heart is heavy. And my heart's not made heavy by the lying Shaz storm I've been watching for 2 years from the power brokers, but from the compliant sheep-like response of the majority of the population. It's been a stab in my soul. And what's the ultimate goal, per Dr. Rechtenwald's assessment for those who are promoting the Great Reset? Thought control. These freaks, these people with human bodies but devil's souls, what do they want? To read and control your thoughts. That's right. With the help of an ever-increasingly sophisticated AI system, they hope to one day to be able to read your thoughts and adjust your social credit score accordingly. German Klaus Schwab, quote, goes so far as to cheer developments that aim to connect human brains directly to the cloud for the sake of data mining our thoughts and memories. Rechtenwald says if successful, this would constitute a technological mastery over decision-making that would threaten human autonomy and undermine free will. The agenda seeks to accelerate the merging of humans and machines, resulting in a world in which all information, including genetic information, is shared and every action, thought, and motivation is known, predicted, and possibly precluded, end quote. What is this? Star Wars? I mean, what is this? What weird sci-fi movie am I watching that people want, that China's enacting, that I think is being rolled out right in front of us if I'm watching if I'm discerning the gestalt? And again, I know that I sound nutso. I'm risking a big potential burn of my cred capital with you, my listener. But the bigger risk? Our ignoring all this as wild speculation. Earlier I referenced Black Mirror's that nosedive episode. What we're describing here will far surpass the mostly psychological narrow presentation of nosedive. Lacey Pound, Bryce Dallas Howard's character, was a naive, generous, hopeful sweetheart. That show only barely touched on how nasty and capricious and sinister this'll all get. Already is in China. I mean, can you imagine what an AI tracking social credit system would be like here in woke America? Here's just a few examples. Whether you're a teacher or a student, you didn't use the correct pronoun in the classroom, ding, 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 your score goes down on the spot. You looked or didn't look. I forget which is worse now. You looked a minority woman in the eye. Ding, 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 score goes down. You held the door open for a woman with a super short haircut, or you didn't hold it open. I forget. Which is worse now? Ding, 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 score goes down. Your last name is Espinoza, but you're really only 5% Hispanic? Do you fill out that job application by checking the minority box or not? Ding, ding, ding. New folks just moved into the apartment next door. To welcome them, you took over some homemade tacos, but vegans, they don't eat meat, and they're offended. Ding, ding, ding. Oh, could you imagine the effect it would have on simple neighborliness? Actually, yeah, I can. I've seen how impersonal it gets when we're all wearing masks in the grocery store. Oh, Lordy, can you imagine the effect that all of that would have on holiday family gatherings? Actually, yeah, I can, because I've already seen how hard masks and vaxes or not, and boosters or not, have already been on extended families, on my extended family. Can you imagine feeling like a criminal for biking down your street without a mask on? Actually, yes. When the C-19 first broke and I drive to town refusing to drive with a mask on, I felt naked, exposed. And taxes and governmentally scheduled health checkups and never being able to ask a question about official policies, let alone make satirical wisecracks, it would be utterly stifling. This kind of social scoring credit system will be devastating on the fabric of society. But that's precisely the intended effect. That's the gestalt. That's the pattern. Stifle. Swear your allegiance. Kiss the boots of the leaders. We can recognize this pattern. We discern the pattern now because we've seen it implemented elsewhere. Russia, Cuba, Venezuela, China, and now Australia. Blimey, Aussie land? Lord have mercy. What can you do? Well, number one, you should hope I'm wrong. Hope and pray I'm wrong about all of this. I do. Number two, stop trusting the government or big tech or big pharma or bureaucrats. As a Christian, take a vow and refuse to be gullible. Take an oath that you won't be 50% sheeple. Instead, Jesus said, be crafty as serpents. Number three, view the government as a necessary evil, but not the solution to all problems. God is the solution. God-breathed ingenuity is the solution to most problems. Refuse. Number four, refuse. O, for the love of humanity. Resolutely refuse to stop asking questions. Bureaucrats loathe questions. I saw it in the university up the Waz. Bureaucrats loathe questions. Politicians loathe being asked to explain their decisions. Questions help to make them accountable. Ask questions or cheer on others who are asking questions. Number five, stop voting for candidates who see the government as the solution to all our problems and concerns. I swear, the last politician to even say the phrase smaller government was Ronald Reagan. That was 36 years ago. Stop voting for candidates who think the government's the solution to every problem. Number six, build a network. Family, friends, support. fiscal support, food support, emotional support, prayerful support, encouragement. Build a network. Number 7, encourage your pastor to speak out on social matters where Christianity shines light and truth. Anytime he even touches on saying something prophetic, go up to him afterward and praise him like he just invented the wheel. We need to promote courage. Number 8, remind yourself that trust has to be earned. Again, don't be gullible. Number 9, be slow to give out your data. Now, mostly, this cat is already out of the bag. I'm furious with my naive self that I ever gave Apple my fingerprints when I programmed my cell phone. That may have been the worst decision of my life. My fingerprints are none of their business. And again, with the marriage between big tech and government going on, we know for certain that our data is being stacked and tracked against us. What else? Dig into your faith like you never have before. Become a disciple. You guys, I'm so grateful for you listening to me. This is the weirdest, most over-the-top show I've ever done. But this is the gestalt, the pattern. I don't see anything going on that doesn't line up with where China is. We're headed in that direction. Lord have mercy, Christ have mercy. Please go now and turn your beautiful God-given brains on, everybody.